Oh yes. Oh yes, you're familiar with that music, I'm sure you are. Now let's start the new season, start soon. Not that there is much of a gap these days. Ricky Burns fights for the WBO title in Glasgow on September 4th, and 2 weeks later, the Magnificent Seven arrives in Birmingham. It's big and bold, and the latest, but certainly not the last big event to be put together by Frank Warren. The list is long, the nights fantastic, well most of them. There have been some bad nights with losers, let's not mince our words. Been some nights when, you know, Frank's shoulders have gone down. You don't win every single fight, it's not the way the business works. And people tend to forget that, they just tend to look at some of the big nights and remember some of the nights that were dreadful. Anyway, not from a boxing perspective, but from a win and a losing perspective. Anyway, Frank's been putting fights together for a long time. Jerry Martin against Otis Gordon, I think it was, at the Bloomsbury Crest Hotel in December 1980 was indeed a long time ago. I'm delighted to say that Frank joins me on the line now. Frank!
Good evening, Steve.
It was Otis Gordon, wasn't it? Was it Otis Gordon, Jerry Martin, that first one?
That's right, yeah. Bloomsbury Crest Hotel in December 80.
Yeah, and Martin was fresh off a world title loss and went on to a couple more. I mean, he was a proper player, wasn't he, Jerry Martin?
It was supposed to have been for an American title, but the Boxing Board of Control in those days wouldn't allow it because I hadn't run enough shows for a title fight. So I lost it. I was going to get some American TV, only small stuff at the time, but didn't get that, and lost a fortune.
On the show, I bet you did, yeah.
Yeah, done my money, and to cap it all, it was a crap fight.
Yeah, it was one-sided in the end, wasn't it? Yeah, because he was.
It was just dreadful. It was a maul. It was a maul.
Hey, listen, it could have been worse. It could have been worse. You could have quit then and gone into a different line of business. Frank, we'll talk a bit about the September 18th, the Magnificent Seven. Although there's more than 7 title fights on, aren't there? There's about 9 or 10 or something, or
there's
11
9.
or whatever.
There's 9. We know sometimes how it is. You may lose a fight, so whatever happens, there'll be 7 fights going out. So that's 7 title fights on. But we've got 9 on the card anyway.
In fact, a couple of people have been asking about that, about what's definitely going out, or is that still open at the moment? What's part of Sky's package at the moment, Frank? Do you know, or is it?
It's going to be finalised, but hopefully it'll be the 7 fights. It will be Magnificent Seven. That's what we call it. So 7 title fights.
It's a cracking bit of music, that, isn't it? When you hear that, it does make the hair stand up on the back of your neck.
Great old film, and as you say, really good music.
If you were a fan, you are a fan, Frank, but if you were a paying fan up in the LG Arena on September the 18th, which fight would you be going? Which fight would you be most excited about?
I've got to be honest. I think there's a few of them on there. I think there's some real good 50-50 fights on there. I mean, obviously Matthew Macklin and Barker is one of them. Nathan Cleverly, he's going for
tough one.
He's in a real tough fight. Undefeated guy, tough fighter. Kauter from the Sauerland stable in Germany. Enzo Maccarinelli on his way back, hopefully, and he's got a tough defence. Again, it's a tough fight for him. Kell Brooks, Michael Jennings. That's a really good trade fight.
You could have just gone Chisora and Sexton, because that's going to be a bang up.
And I'm just about to come to that. That's a good fight. I think they're all fights that could top a bill in their own right. And I just think if you're a boxing fan, which obviously people who listen to your show are. You're not going to get better than this.
No, I mean, it's this one. I mean, I did, when this was first announced, I did quite a bit. I interviewed about 8 or 9 of them, and I said, listen, if you think you're a boxing fan and you can't find anything here, then you're not really a boxing fan.
No.
I mean, because there's a bit of everything here, and I don't know if you saw that bit I did in Boxing Monthly last month. I looked at that show. We did a big one the last time we did something like this. It ended at 10 to 2 in the morning.
That's right. Yeah.
And I know that the top of the bill there, obviously Naz a big name, and Kawasaki was about to become a big name, but over the space of 8 or 9 fights, this is a much better bill. In my opinion.
Yeah, and I agree with you. They are, as you say, they're more 50-50 fights. And I think, and also, you're looking at, which I'm hoping for, out of this we're going to get a couple of young stars, and who knows, maybe I'm hoping to do my 30th anniversary show this December. Hopefully be the return of the 7.
Okay,
so we'll see who comes through, who looks really good, and we'll be putting together hopefully another event like this then.
Now, Frank, before you did that first show there, the Bloomsbury Crest show with Martin and Gordon, you've been ringside for a lot of years, haven't you, at Mickey Duff's and Jarvis Astaire and Mike Barrett's shows. You've been You've been ringside. How long have you actually been going to ringside for fights?
Since I was a kid. My cousin who's passed away now, Johnny Wall, he was a Southern area light heavyweight champion. I used to follow his career when he was younger. He used to go to all the fights. Got my family, fight fans. Used to do them, and in my earlier days, I was involved in what they called it unlicensed boxing. It wasn't, but I was involved in promoting those shows. And I was about 23. I started out doing
it. Just wasn't licensed by the British Boxing Board of Control.
Correct,
It was
yeah.
self-regulating.
And it was pretty. I didn't know any better then, and
Sure.
it was pretty sort of. How can I put it? It was
They're a bit lively.
No, it's to make sure it's too lively. There was old pros there. There was one of my relations fought a guy called Lenny McLean on the shows. That's how I got involved in it, and got bitten by the bug, and eventually I was approached by the Boxing Board of Control to take a license out. It was back in those days. You remember there was a few shows. I think they had a show at the Albert Hall when the night of the Tijuana Tumblers, they called it, when the four Mexicans
all
came
fell
in
over.
and all went over in one round, and it just was a little bit of a dip then in professional boxing, and we were getting good houses, and I got invited to take a license out.
It's amazing that period in the whole of the 70s there, because people look back on that, through these nostalgic rose-tinted glasses. But apart from, the guys winning the world titles, none of them made a defence as far. I mean, I think Stracie made one defence. The rest of them all seem to lose it in their first defence. And it's only about 6 or 7 fights. We remember a decade for 6 or 7 fights. It's quite bizarre, isn't it, the 70s?
It is. I remember reading a piece, I think it was Nick Pick wrote it when he was back in the old Sunday Times, and it's when Morris Hope and and Alan Minton, a few other guys, Stracie, when they're all getting beaten, is it the end of British boxing? Was the next, is there a next generation of fighters? And thankfully and eventually there were some guys come through, and there always will. There always be fighters coming through.
Yeah, I mean, and there's always going to be some people who are stuck in that time, who are stuck in the 70s, stuck in the 60s. Some people are even stuck in the 50s, and then going through the 80s. I don't particularly think the 80s was a great boxing decade. I know we had that great night with Barry McGuigan at Loftus Road, and Frank had all those efforts and tries. But I don't look at the 80s as a particularly good decade. Whereas the 90s, I look at as a really special decade, Frank.
Yeah, I think that it was the late 80s and 90s. And
that's what I mean. Yeah, 88 on.
Exactly, and it was. I mean, that was when we, the good thing then was in the 90s that we managed to get. I did some deals with Don King back then, and we were bringing over American TV. Showtime were on board, and they were taking the fights on a delayed basis, which meant we could get shows out on prime time, British time. British TV involved. It was ITV, then Sky. Yeah. But they were big shows. And you need American TV, you need their input to help make them happen. And a lot of the fighters then obviously were coming over were the Yanks. But as you know now, there are hardly any decent American fighters around. There are not that many around as to go back then.
Well, certainly not guys that you could bring over and match, and it would really help your house. That's for sure.
No, I mean obviously, for Floyd Mayweather to come over or something like that, that would do big business. But that's not going to happen.
That's not going to happen in any area. You're absolutely right. I mean, that whole sort of 90s period. There, obviously, you picked up on the Bruno. You managed to convert Bruno's great efforts and great career into world titles. Then there was the Ben stuff, the Eubank stuff. Listen, I'm coming to Naz. I mean, when you look back on some of it, I mean, I'm thinking about. You think even about that mad fight over we had in Cork at Park Equive with Collins against Eubank, where you worked with a promoter over there, and there was meant to be about 14,000 in the place. There was about 50 odd thousand in the place. Do you remember?
What I did, I did a deal with a local hurling
club.
In Park Equive. But what I thought was more, and it was a great event, very good night, it was an open air show. But what I thought was really was amazing was the weigh-in. About 3,000 people showed up for the weigh-ins, which staggering. Which was we had it at Beamish Brewery, and it was.
Beamish.
I had to drink pints of Beamish for the sponsor in front of, we're all sitting there with pints of Beamish.
Was that the one where 007, what's his face, came along, was pouring
That's
the
right.
beer? It was, wasn't it?
Yeah,
What's his
that's
name?
right,
I
yeah.
forget his name. Pierce Brosnan.
Pierce Brosnan.
Yeah, he was a bit. I didn't realise how shy he was, and he was he was at the post-fight do at the press conference pouring the Beamish.
I mean, it was there was really good times, and it was good. It was great for British boxing.
Yeah.
And it was competitive because you had ITV were involved. The Beeb dipped in and out of it.
They did.
Sky were great, and it was a fantastic time for the game.
But just as that, I look back on the 90s, not necessarily through those rose-tinted glasses, but I just think they were great. And then suddenly we get to the new millennium, and then we had that run with Hatton, the run with Calzaghe.
Yeah.
And the run that's still with Khan. I know that obviously the Khan thing, you and Khan are finished, but we still you created some great.
Yeah,
we've had an even better decade in some respects.
I mean, they all came through. Joe was a 12-year overnight sensation.
Yeah.
I mean, he couldn't get arrested at one time. It was tough, but I kept the faith with him. He kept bashing away, and it suddenly happened. It eventually happened for him. Ricky done really well. I mean, I don't think he's ever boxed better than the night he beat Costa-Zoon.
No, it's not even up for dispute.
Yeah, perfect match at the perfect. We got him at the right time for him.